Hi, I wanted to share a video, just sort of some follow-up thoughts about the Elephant Journal article that I shared a few days ago about spiritual bypassing and the high vibes, positive vibes only, no bad vibes culture um, that is really prevalent in a lot of, sort of spiritual, new agey social media communities, in-person communities. I live in Fairfield, Iowa, which is a deeply spiritual community. A lot of fellow TM practitioners live here, and I'm so grateful to be in a place where people are really, focused on their own spiritual evolution and growth, not just for themselves but for the world. Just helping to elevate consciousness and their own nervous system, and also collectively. And this is something most of you know. It's been a huge part of my life. I was born into it, fourth generation meditator. It was very inevitable that I would be around it, uh, although I completely rejected it. And most of my childhood, I was interested in it, but it wasn't until I was a teenager and really um, kind of had hit a rock bottom, basically, that I got into meditation myself. And it really, I've said this many times, it totally saved me. It saved my life. It totally transformed my world for the better. And I could go on and on about how many ways it has done that and continues to do so on a daily basis. And I'm so grateful for Maharishi for bringing out a lot of ancient Vedic technologies and knowledge and wisdom, and shedding just a very profound, deep, insightful light on these very abstract concepts, and making them tangible, accessible, and really practical in many ways. And so, when I talk about, like, I've been really angry as well, and I know some of you have been aware of that, and I've vented a bit on Facebook and Instagram. Um, I'm going through something really intense personally right now that I'm not going to share specific details about, because it involves legal action and will not be, um, really resolved probably for several months. And it's very delicate, so I just can't go into details. But it's been really traumatic, and has really stirred up a lot. Again, a lot of anger, fear, anxiety. I was already dealing with PTSD after Tim's suicide, and before that, my dad's death, my grandma's death. Just already so much. And I, for like I am all for high vibes and positivity. But one of the key things in that article that is really important is just the process, and that I've had to learn really the hard way many times in my life when I have hit rock bottom in different areas, and going through this intense cycle of grief over and over and over again, is just surrendering to that, and accepting it, and accepting the anger and the sadness, and not fighting it. It's like, so much of the time, like, I just want to feel good, and it just doesn't, it's not possible to. It's that's just reality. It's like you have to go through the grief, and like, if you don't embrace it, and if you don't just uh, at the time it might not feel like it's a spiritual process, but it is. There is always the capability to learn and grow from those experiences. And I think I had a lot of resistance to that, especially when the anger really started to flood up last year. I'd say in November is when it really got intense, of 2018. And it's just uncontrollable. Like, I couldn't control it. It wouldn't subside. Day and night, day and night. Just would not even let up a little bit. And I also have a neurological disorder, a rage disorder, that I've had, that really kicked in when I was 5. misophonia and misokinesia. And so that experience of rage and trauma, like I've had over and over and over again in my life. So, it is also something like deeply physiological for me. And yeah, everybody has their trauma and issues. Now, and this is the thing, like with spiritual bypassing and this high vibes culture, like I'm not even trying to call out any one specific person or group of people or anything, but it's just something that I've seen many times, and having lived in a spiritual community, it's something that I continue to see on a regular basis. But I'm going to talk about my experience, and my experience was, again, like I started TM regularly in my late teens, because I'd hit a rock bottom, and I'd left home quite young, and it totally changed everything for the better. I've been sober for about 24 years now, and I say sober like it's not like it was like it was around October 1995 is when I stopped using substances, any alcohol, anything. And it's not like I have that October date, because as any kind of sobriety and recovery, it takes a little bit of time. And it's not like it was like this clean. Never again did I ever touch any alcohol or anything. But I really haven't used, and I don't now at all. I haven't for many years. But I just say that because, a lot of people, when they stop using, they do it through recovery, like a 12-step program or a rehab. And for me, I started meditating and went deep into the Ayurveda, holistic, yoga, herbal medication, meditation. I went deeply into that route, that path. As many of you know, I mean, I spent almost my entire 20s living in spiritual centers, studying consciousness, and this is, and I'm really grateful for this, and I wouldn't change that for the world. Like I'm so grateful for all of the experiences and all of the programs that Maharishi has brought out, and yet, if I wasn't like really diligent about doing everything that I had been doing, I would fall into old behaviors and patterns, and that were really destructive. And I wasn't using substances, but I was using people, or just being self-destructive in many ways. And I'm not going to go into details, but really like pretty pretty difficult situations that I would get myself into. And I was like, why is this still happening? Why? Like, I've been meditating for so many years. Why do I keep going back to these behaviors? And I had never looked at anything in my childhood. And it wasn't until I really hit a rock bottom in 2014. And the thing is, I had been really resistant to doing recovery work prior to that. Like there's something about, I don't know if it's every spiritual community. I don't know, if it's just me, but I know a lot of people in many different sort of spiritual, holistic, new agey cultures who are very resistant to therapy, or modalities that are maybe more modern or Western, that don't fit like some really ancient system or ideal sort of path. And I totally was in that boat. Like, I just thought, like, what is the point of therapy? Why would I talk about my problems? Why would I like look at those issues? I don't want to stir those up. It's uncomfortable if I do. And this is the thing. This is why you have to do it sometimes, because they're still there, and they're going to be uncomfortable, and they're going to be beneath the surface, and they're going to make you act in weird behaviors, no matter how much you meditate, or no matter how much you devote yourself to some spiritual path. If you don't address those and work on them, they're just going to surface and maybe be like less disturbing than they would be without the meditation or whatever you're doing. But they're not resolved. And if they're not active, if they're not really going away, it's like, how do you break through with consciousness? How do you really get to that place of freedom if you're still bound by your crap? When I was teaching meditation, I'm so blessed, and I'm so grateful for this experience. I was working with vets, really high level people with PTSD, and working really closely with them for a while. And in one workshop where that they were attending, the leader, the organizer, brought in a speaker from Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was the first time in about 20 years that I had heard a share, a deep personal story about somebody's journey through alcoholism and the destructive, tendencies that it took on, and hitting rock bottom, and living in their car, and then turning things around through 12-step work, and really thriving, and developing like a deep integrity and responsibility for themselves and their actions, and having a gratitude and a love and appreciation for their God and their higher power, however that was for them. And I remember, I was with somebody else who, a colleague, and they were like, God, that, it's like, why did we have to listen to all that? Like, it was just so much negativity, why would they have to like bring up that thing again? And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, what freedom, like what a relief to be able to express yourself like that. I was like, because just perspective, I live in a small town in Iowa where a lot of people meditate, and people have been here for many years. And, there's this thing that happens. It's like you get any sort of ideal, with any kind of ideology, and, you're in this isolated bubble for so long. And it's like you just kind of lose touch with the outside world a little bit. And now I didn't grow up here, but I chose to come here. In my late teens, I started college here. Actually, I was 21. So, I dropped out of high school, got my GED, and then decided that I wanted to study Ayurvedic medicine. So I came in 1999, and people knew me who knew that I was, a little bit wild and rambunctious. I had been, and said, it's like, well, it's a really small town. It's really conservative. People are really judgmental. I would just kind of keep your private life to yourself, because things spread quite a lot very easily, and people are really judgmental. And I really took that to heart. And for years, I didn't talk about anything in my life personally, except for with like a few really close friends. And this served a purpose. And in a way, it was nice just to dive into like, the meditation path, and not think about it so much. And it's beautiful. And again, I'm grateful for that. But it also, over time, it was not, I was not allowing me to be who I am. And yes, there were outside maybe influences, and people sort of encouraging me to lay low, not talk about things very much. And sometimes you've got to do that. Sometimes you've just got to do that for survival, and just, kind of going with the flow of things, like, when in Rome, when you're on somebody's fluffy heavenly cloud, you don't want to burst their bubble all the time, So for years I didn't talk about it. And when I heard this AA person, hi Daisy, when I heard this AA person talking about all their crap, I just thought, oh my God, like I need to do that so bad. And I just needed to dump and purge all this stuff, a lifetime, 35, 36 years at that point of just crap that I had been holding on to. And, they talk about enlightenment. It's like, when you're free of your stress and strain, totally, when it's just completely out of your system, that's when you can maintain unbounded, pure, transcendental consciousness 24/7. And if you still have all these obstacles, which at the time, like when I hit sort of my bottom in 2014 through certain behaviors, I I actually had a really beautiful experience where I saw Ganesh, which if you don't know is it's like the elephant-headed Hindu god of the remover of obstacles. And Ganesh can both remove obstacles and also put obstacles in your way. Like if you're not meant to be with somebody and that person is being a big turd, or is not available, then it doesn't work out, and that is in your favor. Like, that is a huge gift, and that is a blessing. Thank you, Ganesh, or nature, however, whoever is organizing, however it's happening. Sometimes things don't work out, and that is for the best. And yet also there's this idea, and I thought, just naive kind of state, I saw Ganesh, I was like, oh, everything is going to be perfect. My obstacles are going to be removed. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to have a partner. I'm going to be healthy. Like, all this stuff. And what happened was, a week later, like, I hit a bottom. I was in deep, deep pain. I had a couple breakups throughout the past year and a half before that, like 2012, 2013, where I couldn't function for like weeks after. I mean, I functioned, I showed up, but I was so heartbroken. My friends know, who saw me around that time. It was like, they just couldn't bear to see me go through that again. And I couldn't bear it. Like, I felt like I was going to die. And, and then also, dealing with like the misophonia and stuff, which was really challenging. But I just kind of, a friend of mine had been telling me about how when he started Alcoholics Anonymous, he stopped dating for a year. And I thought, God, at the time I just thought that's crazy. Like, there's no way I could ever do that. And so I kind of brushed it off, but I had that, that was sort of planted, that seed was planted. And when I had this experience, I thought, God, I have to stop, and like, I have to really work on myself. And I haven't had alcohol in so many years. I was like, I can't go to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I researched, and I found, a 12-step program for relationships and behavioral issues around intimacy and relationships. And what a blessing that was. It also, another level of work and spiritual growth and evolution that just like really saved and transformed my life over the past 5-6 years. And the long story short is, when I started showing up to meetings and doing 12-step work, which, if you're not familiar, I mean, there's 12 steps that you work through, and any recovery program that's based on Alcoholics Anonymous. Russell Brand is actually doing some online course on I think it's One Commune is the site, but he's been posting on Instagram, the different steps and like what they mean. And it's been really cool. Now, I don't think 12 steps, it's deep personal work where you're looking at your crap. And I personally don't feel like it should be done alone, on your own, or just with like a workbook. Like, I had a community of people that I talked to and met with every day. I had a sponsor, and I could read with them and talk with them, because when I really started getting into my work on my behaviors, my destructive behaviors and patterns throughout my whole life, and inventorying all of my resentments and fears and my part and everything that I resented or was afraid of, or felt like wrong had been done, within 15 minutes of starting that process, I was on the ground convulsing, shaking completely. Like, it stirred up so much that I thought, wasn't there, because I don't know, I've had great tools that have helped me deal with stress and anxiety, but yet there was a lot of underlying unaddressed issues. And I feel like this is the case for a lot of people. A lot of people hide behind their spiritual path, their spiritual practice. And, not everybody for sure. But so much of what, and not everything as well, but so much of what I was bringing up was around sexual trauma, and a lot of anger. And what I'm currently dealing with is anger around also a sexually related trauma and behavior that involved somebody else who is not a safe person, who has history of not being safe and is currently not safe. And I've shared other videos about being raped as a teenager, and I'm not going to go into more detail about that or any earlier traumas that I experienced, but the anger around this current experience has brought up a lot of anger around other things like this. And and I see it, unfortunately, I do see it in every community, and I've done a lot of recovery with people who, have suffered a lot of extreme abuse, way worse than I had it. And, everybody has their stuff, whether you know it or not. And this is one thing that I really have learned, and I'm so appreciative of 12-step recovery for, is seeing and hearing so many people's raw, vulnerable, painful, sometimes ugly, and also sometimes extremely beautiful truths, and seeing the strength in recovery, and that people live with a lot, that they often don't talk about, that they don't share, they don't feel they can, or there's not a safe space to. And this is one thing that I feel is really, really important, and kind of a shame, is that, this idea that like we can't talk about our stuff, or like don't talk about your stuff, because you will be judged in a lot of places. It makes it an unsafe space to work through your stuff. And especially in a spiritual practice or a spiritual community, okay, there's, in the meditation, it's one thing. And it's not like, there are meditation practices where you do process through things in a specific way, and not every practice is that way. But you have to, it's like, if you have deep stress and trauma and you don't have a way to actively work through that, to process it, to talk about it, to go through some other, like whether it's EMDR or, I don't know, there's so many different therapeutic modalities, or doing some kind of trauma work, energy, some kind of energy work or something, working with a trained person, whether they're a therapist or even like an empath or intuitive. If you don't work through that stuff, it gets distorted and can really, really hurt people, and quite frankly kill you. Whether it manifests as disease or just the pain is too much and you off yourself. And this is the reality, and it happens. Suicide it's a huge epidemic. It's the second leading cause of death for people 15 to I think 29 or 30 something years old. So it's not like it doesn't happen. It happens a lot. And, a lot of people have those feelings and don't really talk about it. Even here, like I've had, friends talk about it, and they say that they talk to somebody like, oh, just, you can't be sad, just meditate some more, or like, you seem so happy. And it's really, it's such a huge disservice. It's such a huge disservice to people and what they're going through, to brush it off. And, then we brush it off, or we don't want to talk about it anymore. And then it's really, really dangerous. If you don't talk about it, it's deadly, period. And, I've, again, the anger that has come up with when I see like injustice, or people being abused or have been abused, or like when another colleague I was talking with a few years ago was like, oh, I wish my daughter was more into TM, and like you, or maybe you can talk to her. And then she talked about how like her daughter had been abused and molested by, I think more than one adult in the community. And, I was livid. I never said anything to this person, but I was livid. In fact, I'm still livid. And I saw this person last week and I almost lost it because of everything I'm going through, and I just had to bite my tongue and walk away from this person. Because why would any child, adult person, and I'm not just talking about girls and women, I personally know more men who have been molested, sexually abused, and maybe that's just the circles and the rooms that I've been in, but that's the case. Why would any person who has been violated like that want to have anything to do with the community or the school of thought where people had, and you see this in many different organizations, institutions, and I'm not saying like this is not a huge problem, that I know of, but it's not a problem. It's not like it never happens. Um, it's like, why would they want to have anything to do with it? It's not just like you just meditate and all these pains and traumas will go away. No, they do not. Um, Meditation is a great tool, and for me it's crucial. It's like doing that with everything else, and meditation makes you more you. It makes you more aware of you. It also gives you more intuition, creativity, and problem solving abilities and insight, so that if there is something that needs to be addressed, TM is often an analogy that's often used is that the process of transcending is like watering the root. So you give water to the root of the tree, and that water goes through the entire tree, all the trunk, the branches, the leaves, the fruit, the flowers. Everything is nourished simultaneously. That's what pure consciousness does. That's what the effect that it has. But there could be a branch that is like doing really bad. There could be some fungus on the leaves. There could be, a disease where you actually have to like address, each individual part. And that's where other programs and modalities can come in handy, and are not just like good, but they are crucial and they're necessary sometimes. And so, you've just got to look at it and address it from all angles. And so many people just get in this idea, and this is not like, the teaching from higher up, but this is just something that happens where people just start to brush off, the other, something that's different, something that's separate. And then, so there's like this fear, there's this thing of, well, it's not exactly what I'm doing, or it doesn't look exactly what I think it should look like. Even what we are doing or what we think it should look like for ourselves, we can't even hold on to that too tightly, because let me tell you, the past few years, dealing with so much just death and shocking circumstances that I've never talked about on social media. I don't know that I ever will, but damn, things that just shatter any illusion or idea or ideology or concept of things. And this is part of what I think is happening in the world right now too. Like, we're just being shocked. Things are being shocked so that we can change. We can let go of things that no longer serve us. We can adapt and be more flexible. I mean, this is a key principle, is this flexibility, to not rigidly hold on to some certain belief or what we think, how we think things should operate. That's one of the things I just, remaining open, because I just realized, like, a few years ago, it's like, God, everything that I thought I knew, like, there is some truth in it, but also a lot of it just doesn't serve me, or it's not what I thought it was, or things that like I had not looked at or addressed because I was afraid to. I had to go into those areas, realms that people don't want to talk about. And I'm not just talking about my recovery. I'm more metaphysical stuff, like the things that people are afraid to look at or go into, that I'm too sensitive to ignore. I know a lot of people are too sensitive to ignore. They're highly sensitive. They're empaths. They're highly intuitive. They feel and see things that others do not. They just simply do not. And and then those people think that like those experiences aren't real because they can't perceive them. And as you're developing consciousness, you're going to perceive more and more and more. So you've got to remain open, and also just able to discriminate and work your way through it with people who understand those realms and those realities. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent right now, but it is what it is. Coming back to again, like other people recently, it's like their behaviors have been so inappropriate that I've witnessed, and it's just like, I didn't say anything. I have this tendency to people please and to not say anything in the moment. Sometimes it just doesn't occur to me till the next day, and then maybe I don't want to go back and say something like, that was really messed up what you did, and that was inappropriate behavior. How you were looking at my boobs the whole time you were talking to me, how you behaved with my friend, how you tried to like get in their pants or go to their room or whatever, totally inappropriate. And People just often don't see. It's like, what are people thinking in this like post Me Too, world? It's like, did you not get the memo? It's like tick tock, time's up. It's up. And I mean, okay, I know from my experience, like I could not see my behavior. I couldn't see it. I was in total denial of some of my behaviors, that I kept putting myself into this cyclical abusive relationships, or being with people who didn't appreciate me, or just would give me crumbs, like just over and over again. It was so painful. It was so painful. And I couldn't see it until I started doing 12-step work and really taking an inventory and like working through it. And I experienced a lot of like straight up miracles, and I've written a little bit about some of it, especially using gratitude. I miracles, like miracles. Anyway, what else? Sometimes you just got to be angry. Sometimes you just got to be sad. Our body, and acknowledge it and feel it and just go into it, feel what's going on in the body. This is something that it's a part of any wise, truthful spiritual program. Path of recovery involves acknowledging what you're actually feeling and experiencing, and not brushing it off. And when we can do this for ourselves, we can do this for other people more too. I'm just that safety and having a space to outlet and to vent and to just listen, without feedback, without giving advice, without judging, commenting, anything, just being there. That's such a powerful word. Being there in yourself, being there for other people. I have compassion for the person that I'm currently dealing with. I do. They must have been so deeply hurt as a child, so deeply hurt. And that is really sad. But it doesn't excuse or make their behavior okay. And I get so mad, and have been so mad when people haven't, I get mad at myself for not protecting and standing up for myself. And so which I'm doing now, which is not easy. I've gotten really mad at other people who have told me, I thought maybe something happened, but I didn't do anything. I was mad the whole year or two before my dad died. I was pissed because I had started to work on, all this stuff, and not that like my dad, didn't do anything. We didn't have a great relationship, but I wasn't mad at him for that. I have other resentments toward him, but that I've worked a lot on forgiving. But people who, like, your kid was abused, and is that person who molested them, are they in jail? Did you beat them up? Did you kill them? Was there something done? Was there something that you did to show that child that you would protect them? I've heard it a lot recently, other men that I know, who were molested by somebody in town, that people are like, oh, well, that person, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard this in various scenarios. People protect the abuser, like, oh, they couldn't have done that. They're so great with kids. They're such good people. Sure, they might be. They might also just have like y'all fooled. They might just have y'all fooled. And they need to work on themselves. And in the meantime, they should not be dealing with kids, clients, whoever it is. What else haven't I talked about? It's happening all around. It's happening all the time in so many places. You have no idea what people have been through. You don't know the kind of abuse that they've suffered. You don't know the kind of abuse that they are currently suffering. It is happening so much. And people, they just don't take responsibility for their actions always. And I don't always, like, I'm not perfect. I'm not recovered. I'm not enlightened. I am gratefully recovering. I have been in a years-long spiritual journey toward enlightenment with a lot of glimpses along the way. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But and so I also have compassion when people just they can't see their stuff. I couldn't see my stuff for years. I thought, how could I possibly have not seen this? I've been meditating for so long. I thought I knew myself. But it's, again, it's like, this is the bypassing. This is spiritual bypassing. When you, have the feel good, you want to have the feel good stuff. So you have that, the sort of the relief, the flow of serotonin and whatever other, reduction of stress that you have, which is an important thing, physiological thing that I believe everyone should do on a regular basis. But it's if it's an escapism, and it's not all, like, not everybody is using meditation or spiritual programs to escape. And there are far worse things to use to escape your pain and agony. Believe me, I've done a few, and I know a lot of people who have died from overdoses and alcoholism, suicide. Too many. And I'm sure you do too, or some of you. But if you can't sit with your pain, if you can't get to a place where you can acknowledge and sit and be with your own pain and work through it and learn from it and grow from it, good luck on the path to enlightenment.